that's a non-story.
If I had my way, Israelis wouldn't be dying right now.
You don't
Israelis
care.
are dying right now because of your government.
If it's suffering anywhere
Israelis
else,
died,
and if it
Israelis
cannot be
are dying
pinned on
because of your
Israel,
government.
even
I don't
by
want
your
Israelis to die.
warped logic,
I don't want
then you
anyone
don't
to
care
die.
about it. You
do.
only care about it if it's related to
That's a
Israel
lie.
and if it can serve
That's a lie.
anti-Israeli propaganda. And that undermines your credibility. You speak about my credibility. I'm
Saudi
very
Arabia.
easy and open, and it's very
just lying,
clear.
Jonathan.
I
You've got
stand
nothing
for my
left.
country, and I'm happy to defend it. But
Can you
what
criticize
stand
Israel?
for is just attacking Israel. Of course I can criticize, and I even do it on my Twitter.
Just.
I've said things about
You
my prime
haven't
minister,
done it one
and
time
I've
today.
said
You
things
couldn't
about
even
my
criticize mass
military.
rape.
Of course I have.
You couldn't even criticize mass rape by your fellow soldiers.
Listen, there hasn't been mass rape. It's such a
Shameful,
It's such
Jonathan.
a nonsense talking point.
You should be ashamed
Mehdi.
of yourself.
It's such
I'm going to talk about people dying on October the 7th. Some of us have condemned that. Some of us oppose that. You only oppose attacks on Israel. You support attacks on non-Israelis. On Monday, let's say his name. Let's say his name. Shaban
don't
Ahmed,
put words in my
19
mouth,
years old.
Mehdi.
No. You don't get to interrupt me. Sorry,
Don't put
you do not
words
get to
in my
interrupt. You have to
mouth,
get
Mehdi.
taking the high ground on interruptions. You'll come back in. Piers will bring you back in. I'm going to finish my point uninterrupted. Otherwise, don't be a hypocrite, as well as someone who represents fascists.
Mehdi Hasan is just so good at controlling the conversation and being able to speak. You'll often find that on Piers Morgan, a lot of people talk over the pro-Palestinian activists, including Piers Morgan himself. Mehdi Hasan is one of the few who can hold his ground and says, no, you will not interrupt me until I'm done with what I'm saying. Now, this is an older episode on Piers Morgan with Mehdi Hasan. I never actually reviewed it. I don't even think I finished this episode myself, so I'm actually excited to watch this. And Mehdi Hasan is going to absolutely destroy everyone here. I already know it. A lot of you don't like going on Piers Morgan's channel to watch the episodes, so I hope you enjoy this. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to this channel. And if you really want to help support, become a member. We are one of the fastest growing channels on this subject. And becoming a member, you'll get to watch all of my content before everyone else. Now let's continue.
A 19-year-old young man, Shaban Ahmed, was a software engineering student.
You're the one who's
can
paid by
I finish my
fascists, and
sentence,
we will
Piers,
get
or is it going to be one way?
Jonathan, just wait, Jonathan. I
Piers,
will bring you.
Piers, you can't tell me not to interrupt, otherwise this conversation will.
No, Mehdi, finish your point, and I'll bring Jonathan in.
Oh, please don't threaten us, Mehdi. We
Don't
know
worry,
you want
Piers,
to
I
be
will.
here so desperately.
Okay, Mehdi, finish your point.
A 19-year-old. You keep interrupting, Jonathan. People can see what a hypocrite you are. A 19-year-old student, Shaban Ahmed, software engineering student at Al-Azhar University. Jonathan's military destroyed his university, destroyed his house, displaced him, made him homeless 5 times over the past year. On Monday, the world, we all watched him burn to death thanks to Israelis bombing the area outside the hospital that he was on an IV, on a bed, in a tent. He burned to death. His mother died. 2 other, maybe 3 other people died. I'm not sure how Jonathan still comes on these shows and defends that kind of barbarism and open war crimes.
I actually remember that. That was a terrifying video. You saw someone on a bed with an IV drip and everything, burning alive, fire alive. Well, their body's just on fire. You saw it. That was terrifying.
I'm not sure how Jonathan sleeps at night watching people burn to death thanks to the military that he served and is now being investigated both at the International Court of Justice and the International Criminal Court.
Sometimes
all documented.
Enough is enough, and
we saw it with our own eyes.
Of vitriol
we saw a woman with a white flag. Jonathan, we've seen what Piers has seen people.
All right, you've asked questions, Mehdi. Let him
We've
respond.
seen people gunned down with white flags.
All right, Mehdi, let him respond.
It's all documented.
What you are saying, your list of false allegations and your list of nonsense that you are spewing out,
everything
of
true,
unfounded things, that the fact that someone wrote it doesn't make it true. All of
you see, again, he's accusing Mehdi of what the Israelis do. So he just said that things you just read about, but you haven't actually seen. That's literally what Israel does. A lot of the accusations they made against Palestinians were just written. There's no proof, no video evidence. And people, like, one of them is just the beheaded babies. Never happened. You just read about it. But people think they've actually seen this. Whereas Mehdi Hasan, actually, the clip that he's talking about where a lady was waving her flag with a child and she still got gunned down, that was footage that I personally have seen with my own eyes. There's footage about it in real life.
These things that
no, we saw people with white flags gunned down in front of our eyes.
By someone...
Jonathan, Piers has seen it, and I've seen it, and everyone watching the show
all
has seen
of what you are saying is slanted and biased, and you know,
unarmed
I read
people
parts of your book,
down
and I know
camera.
exactly what you're doing.
Watched it, Jonathan.
What you're doing is trying to use.
Thank you for reading the book. It's called Win Every Argument, and you're losing.
Big would foreign investment in whatever it is that you're doing and whatever it is that you're representing, how much would that be of what you do? Because you place yourself as if you are above and if you are entitled to criticize everything that Israel does. And I ask, what are your motives and who pays for what you do?
It's a very simple answer, as I told Jonathan.
That's a very classic attack against Mehdi Hasan, the who pays for you. It's a subtle attack. The reason why he's saying that is because a lot of people like to accuse Mehdi Hasan of being funded by the Qatar government, because I think he used to work for Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera got a lot of money from Qatar, something like that. The fact of the matter is that's so long ago. Mehdi Hasan doesn't even work for them anymore. He has his own business now, his own company, Zeteo, which I urge all of you to become a member of. I personally am a member. Great content on there. I love it.
Of the New York Post. And I love this new talking point, Piers. It's got around the right-wing media and the pro-Israel people. I run a company called Zeteo. People can check it out, zeteo.com. It's a great media organization getting very good press from the Washington Post and others. There are no foreign investors. They're all American investors. I'm an American. You asked the question. I know you can't handle brown people, being part of the West. I'm an American. I'm a Brit. I was born in the UK. I'm now an American taxpayer. And I'm very concerned with American taxes going towards the funding of a genocide in Gaza, going towards the killing of a 19-year-old guy who's in an IV in a hospital bed, going towards the killing of children in a school, going towards the killing of 23 people from one family in Lebanon Monday, in northern Lebanon. 23 people bombed by your military, 2 babies killed, Jonathan. That is what you stand for. You serve the IDF, the Israeli military, which, as I say, is being investigated at the ICJ and the ICC. You serve a military that has been credibly accused by the United Nations just last week, by Israeli media, which showed videos of mass rape of Palestinian detainees. The New York Times this week reported that your military sent children, Palestinian children, as human shields into booby-trapped tunnels and buildings. Is that what you did, Jonathan? Can you tell us today, did you ever send a Palestinian child as a human shield into a tunnel? Because the New York Times is saying your military did that. The World Food Programme is saying your military is starving the people of northern Gaza. Did you starve people when you were in the military, Jonathan? What do you stand for? Starvation? Mass rape? Ethnic cleansing? Genocide? Every human rights group in the world says your military is an abuser of human rights. I don't know how many human rights you yourself have personally abused. I don't know if you turned a blind eye to rape on your custody. I don't know if you killed children at at point-blank range like Israeli snipers did to people carrying white flags. You can tell us today how many people you've killed or how many people you've tortured.
Gosh, I'm just saying I would never want to be someone who debates against Mehdi Hasan. And he's using a great tactic here that you see a lot of people use, where you just accuse someone of so many different things. And there's no way this guy, Jonathan, he can possibly answer all of the different allegations Mehdi Hasan put on him. Mehdi Hasan is just flipping the book. He's using their tactics against them. It's just obliterating everyone. No one stands a chance against this guy.
Listen, Mehdi.
I want people to hear what's going on. All of those groups have said they'll stop if Israel stops its genocide in Gaza. NBC News reported that Israel killed Nasrallah because he said, I'm only going to do a deal with you if you do a ceasefire in Gaza. I want to link a ceasefire in Lebanon with a ceasefire in Gaza. And the Israelis told NBC News that's why we killed him. So we know that these groups have agency. Israel has agency. Jonathan Conricus wants your viewers to believe that Israel just blindly, Israel was just minding its own business and Iran attacked it. Israel attacked Iran first. In Syria, they bombed an Iranian consulate in violation of the laws of international law and international diplomatic law. Yeah, they killed Iranians in Iran. They then bombed Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran. They bombed the Iranian capital. And then they bombed Beirut and killed a senior Iranian general. So actually, it was Israel that's been provoking. And when he talks about source of destabilization in the region, everyone in the region knows it's Israel that's destabilizing the region. It's Israel right now that's escalating wars in multiple countries. Everyone around the world knows it's Israel that's the country that is causing the issues. 40 countries, Piers. 40 countries have just put out a statement on Saturday saying, can Israel please stop attacking UN peacekeepers, blue helmets? So please don't give us lectures on who is stabilizing, destabilizing the region. And final point, as for winning, the Israeli general who ran the Gaza division, Gadi Shamni, says Hamas is winning, Israel is losing in a big way. Those are his words, not my words.
There's no way Hamas or the Palestinians in this case are winning against Israel. The only way I would say that the Palestinian cause is winning is because there's a lot more negative press about Israel, which is coming to light finally. These are all negative things that Israel has been doing for decades. And everyone in America just turned a blind eye to it, and not because of anything bad. It's just Americans were unaware. And I think more and more Americans are waking up to it, the reality of what actually happened there. So that's in that case, the Palestinian cause is winning.
Indeed, minding its own business on the 6th of October, when Hamas, with a genocidal intent, invaded into Israel and butchered Israeli civilians. Israel was also minding its own business along the Lebanese border when on the 8th of October, Hezbollah started firing at Israeli civilians and military and eventually forced about 70,000 Israelis to flee their homes after many of them were killed. Israel was also minding its own business for many years.
You've displaced
and has,
a
as
million
you well
Lebanese
aware,
people.
No, Mehdi, Mehdi, the reason that happened isn't because the IDF is fighting there. It's because Hamas is storing weapons there, and they're abusing humanitarian facilities, and they're using schools and mosques and whatever is left of hospitals in order to fight from. And then the IDF targets where the Hamas is fighting from. And unfortunately, people have gotten wounded. I regret that. I know for certain that that wasn't the intention of the IDF. It's a very sad and regrettable side effect of that happened. And I'm sure that the IDF will be extra careful in the next time that they attack. But it doesn't make it deliberate. But I think it's hypocritical of you, and I will finish. I think it's hypocritical of you, Mehdi, that you don't speak about the fact that why are they there in the beginning? Why are there ammunition stored in a hospital? Why is Hamas using hospitals to fight? Isn't that something that should be criticized even by a highfalutin person like you?
Okay, Mehdi, your response.
You notice, though, how Mehdi had all these different accusations and all these things that Jonathan had to respond to. Jonathan is put on the defense instead of the offense. Very powerful position for Mehdi in this debate. And that's how he always wins. He's always on the offense. Negative. Very few times do you see, I don't think I've actually seen Mehdi Hasan on the defense ever. So this is how he wins.
So first of all, that's false. Even the Israeli military hasn't claimed it was ammunition. There's a debate about what the secondary explosions caused. It could have been the gas cylinders that people were using. But the issue is you're bombing areas of tents and hospitals. You've bombed refugee camps, as Piers pointed out. You've bombed schools. As I've pointed out, and you've dodged, you bombed a Lebanese Christian town and killed 23 people from one family, including 2 babies. You've bombed UN peacekeeping soldiers from Ireland and Italy who are not Hamas or Hezbollah either. Israel is bombing people deliberately. We don't need your word for that. We've seen hundreds of TikToks, including my company, Zateo, that you happily mentioned earlier, put out an entire documentary interviewing Israeli soldiers and showing the TikToks of them bragging about their violence inside of Gaza and now Lebanon. As you've read my book, you know there's a tactic called gish galloping, which is what you just did, which is to talk over all the facts without engaging with them. Here are the facts that people can go look up for themselves. Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, the UN Human Rights Office, UNICEF, UNHCR, Save the Children, World Food Programme, WHO, Doctors Without Borders, I can keep going, Refugees International, International Rescue, they all, Care International, Christian Aid, Physicians for Human Rights, they all say the Israeli military is to blame for the casualties, for the killing of innocent people, for not giving warnings, for bombing civilian targets, and for starving the people of northern Gaza. Right now, Save the Children say that northern Gaza looks like the depths of hell. The World Food Programme says no food has been allowed in by your government and your military since the start of October. And by the way, one last point. You mentioned, oh, maybe 10 soldiers did this, 10 soldiers did that. Actually, according to the UN, this stuff is systematic. And I would ask you asked me who my investors are, I'll ask you. You were in the Israeli military. You proudly said you were a combatant. Someone asked you, were you involved in the things the Israeli military is being accused of by the International Criminal Court Chief Prosecutor, by human rights groups, intentional killing of civilians, starving of civilians, the use of rape and sexual violence against detainees, using Palestinian children as human shields, as the New York Times reported this week? Did you do any of that when you were in your service, Jonathan Conricus?
None of that is correct. None of that is correct, and I will gladly address
all correct.
each and
The
every
issue is,
one
did
of
you
them.
do it?
Of course, you know very well that we don't have time to go into a serious discussion of each and every of those flat allegations that you're rattling off as if you say them fast, it makes it true, and as if you wave a few names of questionable organizations, it makes it true.
Very slow.
No. You did many things that are horrible, and you rattled off lots of names of organizations that, frankly, most people around the world, many people around the world, have lost their faith in, think are uncredible. You mentioned organizations that have been shown that they are full of BDS supporters and Israel haters that have 2 jobs in BDS organizations and in these so-called humanitarian organizations.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes,
I want to try and just move to a different sort of theme with this. How does all this end? I mean, what is Israel's plan for the end game here? Because to many people, it looks like you're just going to war with everyone now in the region. It could escalate massively. And if you replicate what you've done in Gaza with what you now do in, say, the Lebanon, where does that leave everybody? I mean, most of Gaza has been leveled. tens of thousands of innocent people killed in the process of going after Hamas. If this is replicated in anything like this scale in Lebanon, you've got vast areas just destroyed. What happens afterwards? And why would you assume that this tactic of going so aggressively after Hamas and Hezbollah in civilian areas is not just going to fuel the ideology that led to them rising up in the way that they did in the first place?
But sadly, we're being forced to defend ourselves, and we weren't doing anything.
How is attacking and destroying so aggressively being forced to defend yourself? That's literally contradictory. It makes no sense.
That is similar to what's going on now on the 6th of October.
Okay.
And just to end that, I will say that, just one sentence, Piers, the next step is indeed Iran. And I think that we will have a conversation in a few months from now, maybe 4 or 5 months, where you can ask this question again after Israel will directly engage the Islamic Republic of Iran and start to shift the tide in the region. We won't have Iran funding and amassing these terrorist organizations against us. That will be the beginning of a much quieter and more peaceful Middle East.
Okay. Mehdi, your response.
He talked again about there were too many names and I speak too fast. Let me just be clear. I can speak very, very slowly. One issue, rape. He lies and tells your viewers that Israeli soldiers are held to account. That's not true. Anyone can go on Google right now and look at the number of Israeli soldiers, the percentage who are actually indicted or charged with any crimes. It's 98, 99% of Israeli soldiers are never charged with any crimes. And that's from B'Tselem, that's from Israeli human rights groups. I'm sure Jonathan will call them anti-Semites as well. And when we look at one single instance of rape in detention, which was well documented by the Israeli media and by human rights groups and actual Palestinian eyewitnesses, what happened? The Israeli military police, Piers, went to the base to try and arrest the soldiers. The soldiers ganged together, attacked the military police, and then the parliament had a debate about whether rape should be legal or not, whether it's legal to rape Palestinian detainees. And now we're learning this week, Piers, that the military police officers who were assaulted by the soldiers who were the buddies of the rapists, are too scared to give testimony against their soldiers because they're worried about repercussions.
Mehdi, I don't disagree with you.
I don't know. Hold on, Piers.
No, I want to ask you one question.
That is very important that we talk about accountability.
I know. I've got one supplementary.
I will answer your question, but I'm going to finish my.
But on the issue of rape,
I'll come.
Okay, on that one issue of rape, though, what I haven't heard you mention at all is the hideous sexual abuse, including rape, of so many innocent women.
Because we all condemn that.
On October the 7th.
I know, this is so stupid, Piers, because everyone condemns that. What we're talking about is the most moral army in the world, the Israeli IDF, and the prisoners and everything all involved in this conspiracy that's going on with the prisoners getting raped by the military and by other people in Israel. How is that okay? No one talks about that. Everyone talks about all the other rape that happened. Everyone talks about that. Everyone is against that. But no one talks about what Israel is doing. That's why Mehdi is bringing it up. And honestly, I'm starting to think, I'm not starting to think this. Piers Morgan just says this stuff to keep the conversation going, to keep it more engaged, for the arguing to continue, and then he lives off the views.
Well, no, but I'm asking you now, you haven't mentioned it. And Jonathan's raised that several times. You only seem fixated.
Why would I? Because
you're fixated with Israeli soldiers who may have committed rape. What about the rape against Israelis?
Piers, I did an entire show. We keep mentioning Zeteo. I'm loving the plugs, Piers. Appreciate you. On Zeteo, people can go and watch an entire show I did with Bassem Youssef, another one of your guests, where I talked about on that show about how the UN report talked about gender and sexual violence on October the 7th, how that needs to be prosecuted, how it needs to be investigated. And you know what the UN said? They said, we haven't been able to confirm instances of rape, but we want to, but the Israelis are blocking us from interviewing witnesses and coming into Israel. So maybe Jonathan should get his government to allow UN investigators to finish the job, because I believe all rapists should be held to account. Jonathan doesn't. He hasn't said a word. I brought it up several times. He said, it's a few men here and there. No. They're not being prosecuted. The Israeli parliament defended them. The Israeli media had debates about whether rape should be legalized. That is the military he's part of. He earlier, in a very racist way, suggested, I have no civilization, no country, no loyalty except to Qatar and Iran. I'm a British American of Indian descent. I have nothing to do with Iran or Qatar. I would say this, that Jonathan needs to deal with those human rights abuses. And finally, the last point I'll make, you keep going on about, these groups are not taken seriously. Jonathan Conricus, Piers, wants you and your viewers to disbelieve Amnesty, Human Rights Watch, UNICEF, UNHCR, Refugees International, International Rescue, Christian Aid. Disbelieve all those groups. Disbelieve the World Food Programme run by Cindy McCain, the late widow of John McCain. Disbelieve all of them and believe the Israeli military, which he was a spokesman for, which was caught lying about beheaded babies, about calendars on the bottom of hospitals, about Lebanese documentaries, the number of the Israeli military lies that they've had to own up to. It's a joke. No one trusts anything Jonathan's saying.